All right. So we are lucky enough to have Jerry Williams with us today. She is a retired FBI agent, author, and podcaster. She has published a nonfiction book called FBI Myths and Misconceptions, a manual for armchair detectives, as well as a police procedural series featuring Special Agent Carrie Wheeler. Um, uh, and Jerry, I'm sure there's a lot more that I could add to that introduction, but I'm going to let you take it away. And we are just very excited that you're here today and excited to hear all about anything you would like to share with us.
Great, great. All right. Um, well, let me start off and say that I was an agent for 26 years. I spent most of my career in the Philadelphia division, where I worked primarily economic crime, so your Ponzi schemes, your advance fee schemes, embezzlements, business to business, telemarketing fraud. That's what I did. And I did it again for most of my career. I am still very fascinated with fraud and corruption and the things that people will do and the schemes they'll devise just to find a way to take other people's money. So that's what I write about too. At the very end of my career, I knew that I wanted to write books. You know, I'm a big reader. I'm an Air Force brat, so lived all around the world with my father, traveling to different places with my two sisters and our mother, and books became my friends. And so I just love reading. And, like many of us, we read a book that maybe is not exactly what we expected, and we say to ourselves, one day I'm going to write a book. I can do that. And so towards the end of my career, I, started thinking about that more and more and actually started working on my first novel, which took me, I love to tell this because there's a lot of people usually in these groups who've been working on a book for years, but it took me 8 years to finish that book. And
Yay.
and it is based on a real case. I fictionalized it, but it's based on a real case. But I just wanted to share with you that, my love of writing, you and I have a lot of things in common, and that's definitely one of them. So when I got out of the FBI. My last 5 years, I was the spokesperson for the FBI, and that led to a job as the director of media relations for SEPTA. And for those of you who don't know the Philadelphia area, SEPTA is the transit agency. So the buses, the trains, the trolleys, the subways. I was the director of media relations in front of the camera talking about what was going on at the transit agency. And so all of this was happening while I'm writing, my book. And at some point, I was able to get an agent with Curtis Brown, one of the top literary agencies in New York. And they had my book and they shopped it around, and I was so excited. I thought I had it made. And it didn't
Uh,
sell. It did not sell, which I was just so disappointed because the literary agency just loved it. I think one thing I always like to say to people when I'm in author groups is that just because a book doesn't sell doesn't mean that it is not worthy of publication, especially nowadays when there's so few publishing houses that are open, that it's a matter of the publisher looking at it and saying, can I make money off of this? This is a commercial business, and they need to look at each book and try to figure out, how can I sell this? It has really, and most of the time, very little to do with whether your writing is good. And luckily, I realized that. I mean, I had spent a lot of time. When I say 8 years, I worked during that time with a developmental editor, learning how to write, making sure the chapters and the flow and the plot and everything were, so I knew that the book was good. And I just decided back then in 2016 that I was not going to put that book in a drawer. And so, working with Curtis Brown, who at the time, I don't know if they still have it, they had like a white glove service with Amazon. I published it with the Curtis Brown um, emblem or logo on the spine. And so even though they were a literary agency, they published it on my behalf. And then I decided to double down. And so I wrote the second book in the series, knowing that no publisher is going to want the second book of a series. And so I went ahead and published that again, independently published. I got it wasn't really my rights back from Curtis Brown because they were doing it on my behalf, but they did not own the copyright. So I got that book back and I changed, I redid the covers and then I put that out as a two-book series. So I learned that they call a two-book series a duology. I don't know if you knew that, but I love saying the word. So now I have, going back to the first book, when I was still working with the literary agent, he said to me that one of the things that we need to do while we're trying to sell this book is for you to start building a platform. And, I wasn't, sure what I wanted to do, but I decided in order to build a platform, meaning that I was looking for a way to find readers that would be interested in my books. All of my books are about a special agent who is investigating fraud and corruption for the FBI, an FBI agent. And so I thought, well, a good way to do a platform I could have blogged, but I thought, no, I'm going to start a podcast. So I actually started my FBI Retired Case File Review podcast in January of 2016. So it's 9 years old now as of this January. I have 300 and I think I'm going to post on Wednesday my 348th episode,
Oh,
including
wow.
yeah, including one with former FBI Director Christopher Wray, and so many of the FBI agents that, you may have heard about, like Joe Pistone, from Donnie Brasco and, people that investigated Oklahoma City bombing and the first World Trade Center bombing. I've got interviews, Waco, the Unabomber. I've got interviews with FBI agents who investigated some of the FBI's high profile cases and cases that you have never heard about before. And I make sure to do a variety of cases from cybercrime and kidnapping and murders and drugs and espionage and mob the mafia, so everything you could possibly think of. And I like to say, my tagline is that I am a retired agent on a mission to show you who the FBI is and what the FBI does. And it is so helpful for writers. I get a lot of people contacting me, asking me if I could, read their book and help them create authentic characters. And of course, I can't do that. I'm trying to write my own books as it is, but I will send you links to different episodes that I think will help you in creating your character, depending on what, your FBI agent is investigating in your novel. And so I have the podcast where I interview retired agents again. We do case profiles, so we start a case from the beginning, of predication when they first were assigned the case to the very end. And from that, during the first 4 or 5 years, we kept coming up with things that people seem to get wrong, those myths and misconceptions and cliches that we often find in books, TV, and movies. And so that's when I created this list of 20 cliches and misconceptions about the FBI that you either have hard copies of or Maureen will probably get it maybe find a way to get that to you electronically. And from that reality list, I was talking to an entertainment attorney, and he said to me, "Well, why don't you make this a book?" And so in, I think that was like 2019, I wrote FBI Myths and Misconceptions, a manual for armchair detectives. And as you see, I'm debunking cliches for those who read, watch, and write crime dramas about the FBI, or who've always wanted to be a special agent. For that attendee here who doesn't write books but just wants to hear about the FBI, this book is for you. And so for each book, each chapter in the book talks about the cliches that are listed here in the 20 cliches and misconceptions about the FBI. And based on that, I got a call. I got several calls, several emails, and have now had the opportunity to work as an FBI TV consultant. I was a TV consultant for Class of '09 on Hulu. If any of you have seen that, I really enjoyed that. And the executive producer, Tom Rob Smith, on that one was just so kind and was very nice to me and telling people about how I helped him uh, create that series. And then I got an email that was unbelievable. And it was from J.J. Abrams people. And I became the TV consultant on the new show Duster, which is going to be on Max. That's going to come out in May. Actually, I've been working with them. I worked with them for over 4 years. We started that, working on that series from the very beginning. There wasn't even a script when I started consulting with J.J. Abrams directly. Yes, with J.J. Abrams and
Cool.
Latoya. Yeah, it's so cool. And Latoya Morgan, who has been a writer on so many shows that you've known, like Parenthood and also The Walking Dead. I mean, she's just fantastic. She, got the call, and she is the showrunner on this new show, Duster, again, which will start in May. And I'm just so excited for everyone to watch it. It's a period piece. It takes place in the 1970s. And the star of the show, Rachel Hilson, and you all know her as Young Beth from I don't know, went right out of my, This Is Us. She is playing the first Black female FBI agent. I wasn't the first. I was about like the 23rd when I joined in 1982, but definitely many of my experiences and my insights are going to be in this show. And I'm telling you, I've read every single script. It is fantastic, and I think it's going to be a huge hit. I hope it is because I'm under contract for for any other sequels that they have on that show, on the series. So I hope it continues for forever and forever. So basically, that's who I am. And so I come with you with a lot of authority. I retired in 2008, but I stay relevant with the FBI by talking to FBI headquarters, talking to recently retired agents, keeping up with what's going on. And I'm proud to say that in 2021, I received the FBI Agents Association's Distinguished Service Award for writing and sharing and showcasing FBI stories. And so I had the honor of going to a big banquet at the Four Seasons in Washington, D.C., and giving the keynote speech. And my dinner companion at that banquet was director Christopher Ray. And so that's how I was able to get him to come on my show because we had a nice conversation over dinner where I helped him bring up my podcast on his phone so he could, listen to episodes. So, all right. So, yeah, so I know about what needs, or I know the importance of trying to get your FBI characters right. And I like to make sure people understand that what I like to do is provide the information. So if you decide that you don't want to write them the way that they actually, that what they do in real life, that's okay. But I want you to have that information so you can have parts of your story be authentic. So the one thing as we go through these cliches is to make sure you know that the most important thing is your story. We have the X-Files, and then we have the show Fringe, which was another J.J. Abrams show, where their FBI characters are doing things and working cases that we all know, or we all think anyway, are not real. But they are, yes. I don't know. That may be way above my pay grade. Maybe they are, and I just wasn't authorized to know. But as far, but what we believe is that they're totally fictionalized. But boy, oh boy, were they big hits. These shows had a great following. Went on and on for years and years. I think Fringe had 6 or 7 seasons itself. Uh, so we all know that you can, use your imagination. We're writers, so you're allowed to change it up and do things that you believe are going to make your story, what you want it to be. So I'll repeat one more time as we go through these cliches and misconceptions, and I tell you what really happens. The most important thing is your story. And I don't know, Maureen, if you see questions, I'm not looking at the questions, but if you see questions and they're pertinent to what we're talking about, if you want to ask me now, or we're just going to wait till the end,
Okay.
it's up to you.
Okay. As I see questions come in, I'll just kind of let you know that they've come in. So,
Okay. All right. So the first cliche, and this, the second one. I think it's important too. I couldn't decide which one was going to be number one, but because a lot of times when I'm giving this presentation, I am talking to writers. And when I wrote the book, it was really for people writing books or doing movies and TV shows about the FBI. And so I made this the number one because I want to make sure that people understand that most of the time, when you are reading a book or watching a show where there's an FBI profiler, hunting down a serial killer, it is basically incorrect. Um, the serial killer genre has become its own genre, and so we've kind of accepted it. But it's really not the way that FBI profilers work at all. They are consultants. They're based in Quantico, Virginia. Yeah, and what they do is help investigators solve what appears to be unsolvable cases. And so somebody's already investigating this, whether they're an FBI agent or they're a detective in a small town, in California. They're already working on this case and they can't seem to break the case. They can't figure out who's involved. They can't find their victim. And that is when they contact the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit free of charge and ask for assistance. And that profiler is going to get all the investigative evidence. They're going to get all the interviews. They're going to get the crime scene photos. They're going to get all of the surveillance, everything, any photos, anything that you've, as an investigator, have pulled together on your file, and they're going to go through it looking for things that might have been missed because now they're a trained eye. And so they're going to be consulting on this case. Maybe sometimes they do go out to meetings at the particular place where this crime has occurred and talk to all the investigators. Maybe they might even go to a crime scene, but they are not the investigator. They're not running down a dark alley, and they're certainly not going down into a musky musty basement looking for a serial killer. So that is probably the number one. But again, the most important thing is your story. And so if you are writing a serial killer uh, novel, crime novel, You better have your profiler doing those things because that is what audiences, your readers expect now. But it is a myth. It doesn't really happen that way.
We do have a question that's come up.
Hmm.
Jerry, um, do they help state officials as well as in federal cases and state cases, both?
Yes, yes. And even overseas, law enforcement and security services overseas have consulted with FBI profilers from the Behavioral Analysis Unit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The second one, which is one that, again, I flip-flopped on whether it's number one or number two, is that the FBI doesn't play well with others. And I'm going to have to play this because I know most of you know what this is, but here's an example.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm Agent Johnson. This is Special Agent Johnson.
Oh, how you doing?
No relation.
I'm, I'm Dwayne Robinson, LAPD. I'm in charge here.
Not anymore.
Now, I'm sure you all remember that. And there are so many movies and books that you see where they show the FBI coming in and taking over. And I just want to tell you that that is just not the case. It's such a cliche. For most offices, when there is an event, everybody already knows each other. They've had exercises together, they've gone to conferences together. I know the different chiefs in a particular county may meet with the FBI on a regular basis. Some of them even have a weekly lunch meeting. We know them. We have task forces for domestic terrorism. We have task forces for international terrorism, violent crime, crimes against children, cyber. And when I say task forces, that's where the FBI actually comes together with local, state, and other federal agencies, and they work cases together. Most of the time, those task forces are manned in FBI space, and the FBI pays the overtime for anybody that is on loan from a local police department or the state police, working together in two-man teams of an agent and an investigator from one of our law enforcement partners. They're deputized, they have access to our files, our databases, they drive FBI vehicles. And so it's very, 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 very seldom that an FBI agent will show up at a crime scene and not know everybody there already. Now, they may not know the the beat cop, the patrol officer, but they definitely know many of the detectives and the top brass in that particular agency because we work together on so many occasions. And so that cliche, the FBI doesn't play well with others, is one that I'm trying my very best to get people to stop writing in their books. And I understand why they do, because, of course, nothing happens. A book is not a book and a story is not a story until something happens. And so people are looking for ways to have conflict and to create tension in their books. And they rely on this cliche. And of course, you can have conflict between two individuals, an agent and, somebody, a detective that they're working on, just because they don't like each other, but to use the fact that it's the FBI coming into a small town, that's a cliche that is getting tired and I hate to be cruel, but may even be a lazy way of creating tension in your books. All right.
That's good to know.
Okay. The third one is that most FBI agents are white males and female agents are single. And I put this one in, uh, kind of tongue in cheek because the reality is that most FBI agents are white males. About 20% of FBI agents are minorities. About 24% are female, but the majority of agents are white males. Um, the number of black female agents, you'll be, I guess, I hope, shocked to find out, is 1%. When I came in, it was like 0.3%. It's now grown, tripled to 1%, but there just is not a lot of black women who are representing the FBI. I'm trying to do my best by, talking to women and letting them know what a wonderful career it is, talking to all women and letting them know what a wonderful career being an FBI agent is, talking to all minorities, and just making sure that they're open to the possibility of becoming an agent. For me, I was a psychology major in college, and after college, I got a job as a what the title was juvenile aftercare counselor. And so I was able to use my psychology degree, traveling all over the state of Virginia for the Department of Corrections, meeting with the kids from our community in Newport News who had been sent away to reform schools and group homes and different placements because they had done a crime and were adjudicated and sent away. It basically was a juvenile probation officer because when those kids came back to the community, I still worked with them, still met with them, made sure they went to school, checked to make sure they were working, etc. And one day I was looking at a newsletter that came out saying that the FBI was looking for more women and more minorities. And I had never thought about joining the FBI at that time. It just was not something I thought about at all. I had watched all the TV shows, and again, what I usually saw was a white male in a suit, and I didn't necessarily see myself. It was not a far stretch to consider a law enforcement position. My roommate in college, who is still my best friend today, was a police officer in Baltimore. That's what she did after college. And so that, opened my eyes and made me feel comfortable with the possibility of becoming an FBI agent. And so she helped me, kind of recruited me, part of the recruitment process of getting in the FBI. And I returned the favor 2 or 3 years later when I convinced her to become an FBI agent too. So it all worked out. We were my roommate in college, best friends, and we both became FBI agents. And I really should mention this since this is Women's History Month. Oh, I wish I remembered what episode it was, but I did a three-part series on women in the FBI. So if you do have a female character that is an FBI agent, I hope you check out that series. And one day I will maybe at the end I'll look it up and see what it is because again I have 348 episodes, but that series really will give you a good understanding what it's like to be a woman in the FBI.
Fantastic. Jerry, there is a question that came up.
Mhm.
What is the difference between an agent and a special agent?
No difference.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Yeah. So a special agent is, yeah, special agent is an agent.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Just we just, lopped off the special, but it's the same
All right.
person.
Yeah.
All right. Um, So, one of the things that I like to remind people, again, talking to authors, is that so many TV shows and movies and books have their female FBI agent character as single, and I get it. Especially if you're writing, first person, I like to write, in multiple points of view, but it's kind of hard to. If she's married and has kids, it's kind of hard to get all of that in to your book and keep it flowing and keep the plot going. But I just want to remind everyone that, most FBI women, FBI female agents, are married just like their male counterparts and they have kids. And so that's why on my first series, my two-book series, I had my FBI character was married and she has three kids, she has twin daughters, which coincidentally, I do too. But
Oh.
my husband likes to make sure that I tell everybody who reads that series that that character is not me. Because if any one of you have read um, Pay to Play, you know that she makes a lot of mistakes and definitely mistakes that affect her marriage also. So
Wow.
yeah. So that is number three. And I know I'm going to start running. My mouth is going to start running at the end as I try to get all of these in, which I might not be able to. But the next cliche is that FBI only hires accountants, attorneys, police, and military officers. And again, that's so far from the truth. We've got people that are nurses, people that are musicians, people that own businesses, are teachers. Uh, we look for people who can come into a situation, gather the information, and then relay that back to the office, to prosecutors, in order to take somebody to trial and hopefully found guilty and off to jail. So we're looking for people from all areas. As a matter of fact, probably at least half the people that come into the FBI do not have, any type of law enforcement or military or, law or accounting degrees. So we just have a variety of people that we're looking for. And a lot of times when people, ask, what should I major in? Criminal justice is not the number one answer. The number one answer is whatever you're interested in, because after you graduated from college, then you need to get some work experience. Becoming an agent is a second career opportunity. You can be 23 when you enter. Very, very seldom. You may be shocked to know that the average age of an agent coming on board into the FBI is 31.
Oh,
So it's
really?
a second career opportunity. Most people have been working someplace else, doing something else before they join the FBI.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you might be interested. There might be people who are listening or thinking,
And
I am positive that we have had FBI agents who have been librarians too.
Yeah,
I,
opportunity.
yeah, I
They
know.
all
It sounds
hiring.
really interesting. I mean, right.
Mhm.
Yes.
Is the minimum age then 23, so they don't want you fresh out of college?
They do not. Now, there are some exceptions because, especially when it comes to cyber, some of those positions where if we don't grab you at the very beginning, by the time you've gotten some experience, you may be out of our price range.
Oh,
Yes, yeah. But many, many people who join the FBI, are very willing to take salary cuts to do so. So, that is an opportunity too. But yeah, there have been people, maybe they have a language skill that we really need, or they have cyber skills, or maybe they have master's degree, but most of the time we're looking for somebody who has at least 2 or 3 years of experience. And so I came in when I was 25, but again, many of the people who come in, and again, 31 is the average. So of course we have people that are younger and people that are older, but nobody who is 37. So 37 is the cutoff for joining the FBI, meaning you cannot have reached your 37th birthday, which means for most people, they can't even apply if they have reached their 36th birthday because it takes usually a year. And so when you're already 36, it's going to be very difficult to go through all of the background and the interviews and the physical fitness and all of that you have to do in order to be processed as an agent. And so really by the time you're 36, you're really cutting it close to aging out of being hired. And the reason that that age is 37 is because we have a mandatory retirement of 57. And you have to have at least 20 years of service before you can, get your pension. And yes, we do get a pension. So one of the few jobs that you still can get a nice pension. And so, yeah, so 23 to 37 is the age range um, of becoming an agent. And I wanted to talk about rookie feds because it shows you, it's an example of when getting something wrong about your character's profession can really take readers out of the story. And Rookie Feds, I could never watch it because the premise of that TV show was that she was in her 40s. And I just told you that you cannot be older, than, 37 to become an agent. And so this whole story was about how she was a counselor, a high school counselor, which is real. That's very authentic, I've already mentioned that to you. But she was in her 40s, and that was totally unrealistic. There has never been anyone who joined the FBI at age 40 unless they were with another, maybe they were a Secret Service agent already GS 1811 series, which meant another federal law enforcement agency that allowed them to come in. And so that TV show, I never could watch it because it started off with a premise that was so inauthentic, so wrong, so incorrect that I felt like the writers of that show, did no homework whatsoever, or didn't care, to get that right. All right, next cliche. One agent can work alone on a major investigation. And I love that, how you have a case where you're watching the TV show like The Night Agent. And again, I'm not critiquing it and saying that the show is bad. I'm just telling you what the reality is. So if you want to write a book where only one agent is working on a major investigation, then do that. But I just want to tell you the reality is, as they say, it takes a village. And so even as an agent, working on a case, you're going to need your squad mates. You're going to need maybe the evidence response team, maybe, the SWAT team, to help you pull all surveillance. You cannot do surveillance by yourself, even though sometimes you see that on TV shows and movies. You're going to be made in a minute if you are following, the same car all day long. Even I every now and then will look behind me and say, oh, that car was been behind me now for, 20 minutes,
Oh, great. Yeah.
So, but the reality is, I say that, but I also want you to know that being an FBI agent, a case agent on a non-task force case means that you are like a shop owner. You're running that case, you're running that little small business, and you get to decide the operating hours. Like if you want to take the morning off because you have a late evening interview, then you do that. That's up to you. You don't have to ask permission, so you can operate the at small business, your case, in the hours that you need to. Same thing with manpower. If you can do it alone, fine. But if you need three or four people to help you with an arrest, then you hire or ask the people that you want to assist you with that investigation to come in. People would be really shocked at the autonomy that an agent has in working her cases. I mean, those cases are assigned to you. Most agents get as many as 15 to 20 cases that they're juggling and trying to work on. Maybe as you are subpoenaing records for a particular case, then you can spend time on another case, but you are juggling all of those cases, working on those cases, and nobody is looking over your back. We have a file review every 90 days. And so you may not even talk to your boss or supervisor if you don't need to. If you don't need something, anything, you may not even talk to them, but 90 days, they'll come in to see what's in the file, what you've been doing. It's your time to show, what activity has been going on. And so this is definitely a job for self-starters, somebody that, is self-motivated to get the job done. And of course, you are helping out your own squad mates. We don't partner up usually. If somebody has a partner, it's really their best friend, best work friend. But usually you just ask somebody on your squad to go out with you if you need a second agent to corroborate an interview or to help you out with something. But definitely, there are lots of ways you can portray an agent working their assignments. All right, 6, agents are unemotional and have no sense of humor. And of course, I put this funny movie in because it was funny to if anybody's seen it, but it just shows you, in a crazy comedic way about all of the crazy things that can happen and the different emotions. You got Corky Romano, and then you remember his boss was mean and cruel and uh, really high stress the kind of character. Uh, but from the podcast episodes, and again, podcasts are free, so I'm uh, inviting you to check them out. But from them, you can just hear the emotion and the concern that the agents, as they're talking about their cases, the concern they have for the victims, their witnesses, and in many situations, even their subjects. Um, I've got grown men crying on the podcast as they talk about the sacrifices, working so hard on a case that they totally ignored their family and ended up divorced. I had one episode where the agent was saying how he had a choice of staying for the sentencing of a trial that had gone longer than they thought it would, or going on the planned vacation with his son to climb a mountain, and that, people really kind of looked down on him when he decided to go climb the mountain with his son. And he's so glad he did because the next year the son got in a car accident and died. And he's crying, and I'm crying. And so the episodes just really show you that when you're writing these characters to bring the same type of emotion and humor that you would with any other character. Because as somebody, there's the name of a book called FBI Agents Are People Too. And that's the case. And when I talked about so many of the FBI female characters being single. I mean, it's just so great to have them interact in a family setting and then still try to get their job done. It makes them look real. So, all right. Number 7, undercover agents run cases. And that's one of the things I like to talk about because in so many books, you've got this undercover agent who seems to be doing it all. And he's got the undercover role and he's also working the case. And really, undercover agents are like actors. They've been hired by the director and the producer to play that role. So there is always a case agent who is working this case. And at some point in the case, they say, I need more. I've tried, using an informant. I've tried surveillance. I've tried maybe even, a wiretap. I've tried all of this stuff. And what I need to do is have somebody insert themselves into this criminal world to be able to relay what's going on back to me. And that case agent gives instructions to the case agent, and the prosecutor give instructions to the undercover agent, letting them know what it is that I need, what evidence we need you to gather in this unique opportunity of being infiltrated inside this organization. This is what we need for you to get in order for us to make this case. They have a lot of discretion as to how they do it, but they are not running the case. Questions about undercover? All right. Number 8.
Can I ask, undercover
Mhm.
agents they are typically agents that are not in charge of the case then, that are helping out the lead?
Yes.
Okay.
They're very, very seldom is the undercover, I mean, very rare is the undercover agent also the case agent.
Okay.
Very rare. That's a lot of responsibility because um, one of the biggest things is the paperwork, documentation of what's going on. And there's no way for someone to be an undercover role, being away and not being able to go into the office, is going to be able to maintain that documentation of the case that is so vital and such a necessary part of evidence when you take something to trial.
Right. Um,
Um,
oh, two questions. Yeah.
Can you talk so much about the paperwork and how, like, what would a case agent be trying to do every day?
Everything they do is documented. So if you do an interview, and as a white collar crime investigator, I've had write-ups, which we call our FD 302 report of interview, that were 20 pages long. So you're writing up what you saw, what that person who you interviewed told you, and you're providing all of that information in a narrative form. And so writing skills are really needed in the FBI. So in a narrative form, you're writing, this is who I talked to, and this is what that person said to me, and you're writing all of that up. If you go out on the surveillance, you need to keep a surveillance log. If you're going and gathering evidence, you need to log all that evidence in and follow chain of custody forms. And so the paperwork is extensive. If you are just writing, doing following and gathering information, all of that needs to be written up too. We do communications between offices, which I'll talk to in just a little bit, but you are constantly being it's necessary, it's constantly necessary for you to document the work that you're doing.
There's two other questions that have come up. One that's on the chat was, is undercover a last resort choice?
Um, Not necessarily a last resort choice. The last resort choice, probably more so, is the recordings itself. And I'll talk about that in just a bit also. But it is definitely something that is not used for the majority of investigations. So yes, I take that back. Yes, it is one of the last things you would do. It's labor intensive. It can be dangerous. You're having somebody, an FBI agent, go into a situation where they're pretending to be someone they're not. So, yeah, I take that back. It is one of the last resorts. You want to try to do everything else before and realize that the only way that you're going to get that information is to have somebody infiltrate. So, yeah, I think it is.
Okay. And there's another question. Yeah, go ahead.
Are there some agents who specialize in undercover work?
Yes, absolutely. And one of my close friends, Jack Garcia, I've been able to interview on the podcast, legendary undercover agent, full-time undercover agent. And if you have an opportunity to listen to his episode, he actually just won last year, the 2024 FBI Agents Association's G-Man Honors Award, the one that I won in 2021. He won it last year, but just because of his unbelievable undercover role. So Jack Garcia. Um, One of the things I want to say is that when you go to my website, if you go down to the very bottom, there is a drop-down menu that says violations by category or something like that. And if you're looking for undercover agents, then you can just do that menu and you can look at all the episodes I've done with undercover agents about undercover cases. If you're looking for cyber, if you're looking for crimes against children, all that stuff is in that drop-down menu, and it makes it a lot easier to navigate all the different violations and find the one that you need to gather information about for your story.
That's amazing. We're all going to be doing that.
I can tell you right now, we're not gonna get through this. I think I'm chatty Cathy today. We're not gonna get through all of this today. So
That's all right. Oh, one more quick.
Do you have any episodes on your podcast of elder abuse?
I have one.
Okay.
I have one, and my if you put in trust account, if you just search that, you'll be able to find it. Frank
Okay.
Gasper, Gasper. If you look up Frank Gasper, he is the agent who did the investigation in which there was a elder fraud.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sometimes my memory works, sometimes it doesn't. All right, here's number A. There is only one central database. I love how on FBI, the TV show on CBS, their analyst can, you mention one thing and their analyst is in their databases and they're telling you where this guy went to school, who was his jail cell when he went to prison, who his roommate was in jail. They're telling you the military service. They're telling you what unit. They're telling you everything by just, you know, a few clicks on their keyboard. And the reality is that that information is out there, but it is definitely not in one central database. And some of it is only accessible by subpoena or a warrant. Your military records are in one database. Educational records are usually in one database at the school. So you need to know at least what, college or school or high school or county the person, got their education. Medical records, definitely. You need a warrant for a lot of that. And there's no central database for medical records. So it's all out there, but it could take days, weeks, or more to gather the information that the wonderful, amazing analyst on a TV show or in a book can get in just a matter of time. So just what and that might be a way of creating tension in a book is they're looking for information and it's going to take them a while and it creates a tense moment in your story, because the reality is that the plot does go along quite quickly if you can just access some records in no time at all, but that's not the reality of it. All right. This is one of my favorites. Agents use intimidation and threats during an interrogation. I mean, you see that on TV shows and you read that in books all the time. When you do this and when this is done, you have a good chance of all of that evidence that you gathered during that interview being thrown out and unusable because of coercion. There are some things that you could do. You can lie to people at an interview, but you cannot intimidate or threaten them. And the easiest way to get something from someone is to be kind, treat them with respect, treat them with empathy as you're talking to them. And it's more than just rapport building, it's just letting them know that you did a bad thing. but I am not here to judge you. A lot of times that's a lie, especially if you're interviewing, say, a pedophile that has murdered and killed a child. But if you go into that room saying, you're the scum of the earth and, you should be shot, why in the world is that person going to talk to you? So I had an agent who came on the podcast and he really opened my eyes because he used the term, he said, I don't use interview, I don't use interrogation. When I was going, he was doing crimes against children. He said, when I went out, I said to myself that I'm going to have a conversation with a purpose with this individual. My purpose is to get the information to prove that he is guilty, to get the information to find this child or find this child's body. But I am going to have a conversation with a purpose. And that really was eye-opening to think about it that way. And that's how you can understand how an agent can go into a situation talking to the most despicable person that you can think of and just have a conversation, get that person, do you need a soda? Can I make you comfortable in any way? Did you need to make a phone call? Do whatever you can to make that person comfortable with you so that you can get the information that you need. And the way they show it on TV and in books, is just totally wrong about the reality of how interviews work. And I think a lot of times this is a really good area, again, for your story, where maybe you have two agents and you have, the seasoned agent, saying to them, saying to the person, I understand, you were just trying to, love this child. You wanted this child to, you just wanted to love the child. And there's a younger agent who is just outraged, that you're talking this way, like you understand. And, that tension, that conflict is there. But the reality is the best way to do those types of investigations is, again, to treat the person with empathy because you are trying to get something from them. And the best way to do that, of course, is with honey and not vinegar. Okay. Um, this is the one I love too. There's so many books that in the middle of the book, the FBI director or assistant director comes on the scene or is involved in the investigation. And the reality is, that's not how it works. Uh, Senior FBI executives are not out in the field. Matter of fact, I jokingly say that they want to create plausible deniability. If somebody messes up, that person messed up, not them. I wasn't even there. Um, they have their job to do. Their job now has turned, maybe they were a great agent, a great investigator, but now their job is to be in the office, to get the funding, to talk to the people, their counterparts, and upper management, in their particular city. They have a more of administrative managerial, and they are not going to be out. There goes my dog going crazy. The mailman must be coming by. But they, that's their job. And sometimes I just get so upset when I see, I'm reading a book and the FBI director is, working on this case. There's hundreds of thousands of cases. Why is this person working on this particular case? And again, it takes me out of the story. So that is just something that doesn't happen. Maybe once in a while a supervisor or an assistant supervisor in charge may come out to a crime scene, to pat the investigators on the back and increase morale, but they certainly aren't out there actively involved in the investigation. All right. Number 11, FBI agents work for federal prosecutors. This is another thing. I know that in some localities and municipalities, the district attorney's office, the DA, might have investigators that work for them and they tell them what to do. But that's not how it works in federal government. The FBI agent is in charge of the investigation. Now, they consult with federal prosecutors, assistant United States attorneys to make sure, excuse me, to make sure they're getting the elements of the case that the prosecutor is going to need to prosecute the case. And they're going to make sure that there's prosecutorial merit because nobody wants to work a case. If they get it all done and they give it to the prosecutor says there's no crime here. Excuse me, I need to. Thank you. But the FBI investigates and the prosecutors prosecute. And so I know on Billions, um, when the main character initially was he became governor, but he initially started out as a United States attorney, and he was directing the agents where to go and what to do. And I'm thinking like that is not going to work in real life at all, not at all. The CIA hunts spies in the United States. This is something that a number of people are surprised to hear about. The CIA has no law enforcement authority. The CIA does not investigate espionage or counterintelligence in the United States. They are our spies. Like we have spies that come in, they are our spies, and they're working internationally trying to gather information that will benefit the United States. It is the FBI that are not only investigating espionage and counterintelligence within the United States, but we're also the one that are trying to turn spies, get spies to work for us. That is part of the FBI agent's job. Matter of fact, my roommate, who I told you about, became an FBI agent. That's what she worked all of her career. And so, although I was able to get her on the special women FBI agent series, I don't have a case for her on my podcast because she worked espionage and counterintelligence cases that are classified and is not able to share what she did. So I have no idea what she did for most of her career. But definitely you want to get that right when you are uh, writing a spy novel when it concerns the FBI. The FBI can wiretap anyone anytime. Yeah, they make it so easy in different books where something's going on and they just gonna put a wire, tap somebody's phone or install a recording device in a building or somebody's home. It's not that easy. This is what I was talking about when I was saying that undercover wasn't the last result, which it is because they kind of go hand in hand. This is the last result. By the time you get to this level where you are installing a recording device in someone's home or business, you have come to the last resort. You have got to be able to articulate to a judge that you've done everything else in that case. You've tried everything, and that that the evidence of a criminal activity is there, but the only way that you can get it is by installing a wire in a person's home or business. You have to articulate that to the judge. The judge will make the decision, and even when it is authorized, every 30 to 60 days, they are going to review the results of your recording, what you're hearing, what you're seeing. And the entire time that you're doing this, you have to do what is called minimization. You have got to turn off and not listen and not pay any attention to anything that you overhear that is not pertinent to the criminal activity. You just can't have somebody talking. You got a wire in their home and you're listening to them talk to their grandchild. You got to turn it off. and then you got to turn it back on. Are they still talking about going skating? Turn it back off, or just turn it off until somebody, the grandchild leaves. It is so strict that people don't understand, and they make it look so easy. But it is something that is court authorized, and it is one of the biggest invasions of privacy that we have in the United States. And the FBI is very clear in following those rules and regulations and getting the proper authorization. Now, there is called consensual recording, where a third party can record a conversation of, or a person can record a conversation of which they are a part of. That is easy to do. I just needed, as an agent, have administrative authority, to do that. But the agent has to be a part of the conversation in order to record it.
I think there's a question.
One question. I assume that those restrictions have evolved over time. Is there a place or a resource to identify when the rules governing any kind of surveillance like that, when did they change?
They really haven't changed since I think they might have written them or rewritten them in the 1980s. There is a full episode from an agent who supervised the squad that did that in Philly. So if you look up electronic surveillance, um, you should be able to pull up that episode with what's the agent's name? JJ Claver. Klaver, and he talked about all the rules and regulations for recording devices.
Okay, thank you.
There was another question in the chat. Were those rules in force for the Trump surveillance?
Yes, absolutely. And absolutely. And don't get me started on that, because a lot of the things that you hear, every single item that the FBI did was approved by court, by a judge. I know there was one incident where one of the attorneys, I don't even know if he was an agent, but one of the attorneys did some falsification to get a wire extended, but the initial information had been correct. He was trying to get it extended, and he actually was charged and criminally charged for that. But everything else that the FBI does that goes into those areas was not done just by the FBI. It was also authorized by the court and handled by an attorney at the Justice Department. And so when you hear some of the things, if you just put this for most people, if they knew the procedure, they would realize that what they're hearing is incorrect, because the FBI can't do any of that stuff by themselves. Everything had to be an attorney, a prosecutor, and a judge approved those activities. All right, don't get me started. All right. It's common for FBI agents to be in gun battles. And of course, there's not there you cannot have a thriller or a crime novel when there's not, a shoot 'em up, bang bang gun battle. But the reality is that it doesn't occur in most of the time in the ways that it does on, TV and in a book. The FBI is very good in their operation planning, of making sure they have an adequate number of agents and manpower and gunpower. And so, although we have had, I don't even know what the number is, but it was 36, but it might, unfortunately, in the last couple of years, might be more agents who have died and been killed in an adversarial, gun battle. Most of the time, where we use the safety procedures that helps to keep agents safe. Probably at this point, we've had more agents and FBI employees who have been killed because of the ramifications of working 9/11, gathering evidence at the World Trade Center and at the Pentagon. They have died from cancer that they got from those activities than they have had agents. And we do consider those line of duty deaths also, but more of them have died and from that than are as many anyway as have in gun battles. But of course, this is another example where you do what is most important for your story. And it's very hard to have a crime novel or a crime thriller involving the FBI if there's not a couple of dead bodies and gun battles. So I understand that.
Quick question.
Hmm.
Since you were in the white collar crime department, did you carry a gun or do FBI?
Absolutely. Every single agent, no matter what they work, were required to carry their weapon with them
Okay.
every single day.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
We also had to go to firearms training at least 4 times a year. But yes, every agent. The thing is, and I'm glad you asked the question, because even though I was on an economic crime squad, at a moment's notice, somebody could come into my squad area and say, I'm doing an arrest and I need another body. Can you go? When I was working uh, in Camden, New Jersey, even though it's in New Jersey, it's one of the field offices or the satellite offices out of Philadelphia. And I worked in our Cherry Hill office, which was Camden came under. And Camden at the time, this is in the early 2000s, was, just had all kinds of crack and drugs and uh, every single every single arrest or search that we did that was done in Camden, drug investigation, I was there, so every single one of them, going through people's houses, looking for gathering drugs, making arrest. Usually, I was the person who we usually did an early morning arrest. And so as one of the, few females, I was the one who made sure that the naked girl in the bed with the drug dealer, got her clothes on. So that was our, had the strip search, women that were arrested. So, but as far as carrying a gun, absolutely, you are an agent. And so, no matter what you're working, you could be asked to accompany a squad on an arrest or a search of a violent subject at any moment's notice. And so, what you're assigned is what you're responsible as far as your cases, but you could be helping out another agent and another squad at any time.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, there's one more question here.
What gun, Carrie?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she
What?
said, what gun did you carry?
The last gun I had was a Sig Sauer, so an automatic. But when I started in the FBI, it was a revolver in 1982. Yeah, with Smith and Wesson. Yeah, I had 357. So I was able to during my time period transition from a lot of things. From the revolver to the pistol. From no communication other than the car radio to a beeper to a cell phone to writing up your communications on a typewriter to getting a computer. During my 1982 to 2008, I saw a transition of many types of electronics and digital and all of that. So definitely. And, I'm sure there's even more changes that have happened, since I've come out.
Wow.
How are we doing on time?
We're fine. It's 3:21. We're supposed to go until 3:30.
Okay.
But
I think we can do this then.
okay.
So, FBI agents fly around the world conducting investigations. And again, um, most of the time, this is not the case. It may be even more difficult for, say, you're in Philadelphia and you want to investigate a case in California, you better be able to articulate to your boss why you need to go. Because we have what is called a lead system where I can write up a lead and send it to an agent in California, telling them exactly what I need to have done in this interview and why, and how they can, on my behalf, conduct this interview or gather this evidence. And so I need to be able to explain why, just because of the cost, I need to go. And if you can do that, then you can go. But it's not like you can just get on a private, plane and fly out. You're flying on a commercial flight, and definitely flying coach, the cheapest way possible. And that's just in country. If you are going to go overseas, it's not as easy. First, you have to have host country clearance. You're not going to, and no FBI agent is going anywhere overseas unless they communicate with the State Department and the ambassador of that particular country to let them know they're coming, what they want to, what they want to do, and to get that clearance from the ambassador. And once they're there, they are not operating as an FBI agent. Most countries will not allow an agent to come and even come with their weapon. You've got to have definitely, authorization. Maybe you're going to Afghanistan or someplace really dangerous that you're going to be able to get authorization to bring your gun. Or maybe once you get there, the foreign law enforcement agency or security agency will loan you one if they believe that you need it. But most of the time, you are not actively conducting investigations overseas. And I want to make sure we're really clear on that because, like TV shows like FBI International were totally, again, I can't watch that show. I watched one show where they killed 7 people in Italy and then got on the plane and went home. And I'm like, what? They'd be in jail. They would be in jail. What we do when we go to a foreign country is we work with that foreign law enforcement agency or security agency, and they conduct investigations on our behalf. We're there, letting them what we need, maybe going with them, if they allow that, but they are in charge. Just think about it. We just can't have somebody from, France coming into the United States just running around with their guns and doing whatever they want to do. And that is not allowed on the other side. The FBI does have 63 offices around the world. Usually those offices are manned by 2 or 3 agents. They are there on a permanent basis for they're signed there for a year to 5 years. But again, their whole job, it's almost like the profiler, where their job is to be consultants to work with the foreign governments in order to assist those governments with cases they may have with subjects in the United States, and that the FBI has subjects from that foreign country that are operating in the United States. And we're working together to get those investigations done. And I've got lots of episodes where I've talked to, matter of fact, the one that's up now, the last one I did, episode 347, is with an agent that started working those type of cases in the Philippines and Manila, on Hong Kong and India and in Russia. So he spent a lot of his years working those type of cases. I think I refer to it as the evolution of the FBI's legal attaché program, or LEGAT program. And so that's really, fascinating to listen to his episode and the other episodes I've done where the FBI is working overseas. All right. We just have a few more to go. And I'll just finish this up, even if we run over a little bit.
Okay.
FBI agents investigate murders. And the answer to this is yes and no. There is no quote unquote federal violation or of murder. But the FBI is allowed to or does investigate murders that occur on federal installations, such as Indian reservations, uh, murders of non of civilians, or where a civilian is the subject on military bases, uh, in government property such as maybe a national park. You know, the Gabby Petito case, everybody wondered why was the FBI involved in that? Well, she was actually murdered on federal property. Um, there's Mississippi burning here. The FBI investigated, many of those cases where uh, the Ku Klux Klan or some other organization, murdered or killed someone. It was not necessarily the murder they were investigating. They were investigating the violation of that person's civil rights. That was the federal. And so you may have, even in a drug case, where the FBI is investigating the murder, but they're really investigating the fact that a federal witness may have been killed in in a drug case. And so that's why they're there. There are, most of the time when when you see an FBI agent and they're involved in a case, it is something other than the murder itself, another federal violation that has brought them to that investigation. And that is what they are investigating. Um, a lot of times, the sentencing for that charge is something that the person would have gotten, or more time than a person would have gotten for the actual state murder. Many times, if it is decided that maybe this is a case that should go state, so the FBI could have been investigating it again with their local. Murder is a local, is a local violation. And so almost every time the FBI is involved in a murder case, there is a state investigator working with them on that case. Or the state has a case that they're working at the same time and they're working jointly.
And
So,
there's a question in the chat. Is the same true for kidnapping or serial killers?
um, there is a federal serial killer violation, and again, on some of the podcast episodes, they'll talk about that because both of those have something in common, and that is the multi-state jurisdiction. So if you have a serial killer that is killing people all over the country, the FBI can get into that case because of the multi-state jurisdiction. Same thing for kidnapping. You always hear if you can prove that the person kidnapping victim, cross state lines, the FBI will be involved. And again, you'll see the FBI involved in kidnapping cases where there was no, they don't know that at the beginning. They just know somebody's kidnapped. And at the end, when the bad guy is discovered and the kidnapping victim is rescued, hopefully, the FBI has still investigated this case, but that case will probably be prosecuted by the state, with the FBI agent still as the witness, still bringing in all the evidence, everything that they normally do, but it would be investigated by the state because at the end, that victim was not taken across state lines, and so there is no jurisdiction, federal jurisdiction. That is not the same necessarily when it is a child under 12. The FBI now has jurisdiction to automatically be involved in any type of abduction case of a child, as no matter where it is, even if we know from the very beginning this child has not been taken across state lines, the FBI now has the ability to become involved in those cases. But at the end, that case still may be tried in state court. One other thing I wanted to make sure is that when the FBI becomes involved in these type of cases, they do so at the invitation of that local department. So if you have a missing person, or a murder case locally, and people are like, the local department is just messing up and they're not doing this right. We need to call in the FBI. The FBI cannot just go in and take over like we saw in cliche number two. They have to be invited by that agency to take part because there is no federal jurisdiction. And again, many, many cases where people have talked about that will help you, design your plot to make sure that it is plausible and that you don't have someone like me taking your book and throwing it across the room because it doesn't. This person did absolutely no research whatsoever to get that right.
We don't want that.
No, you don't. Forensic examiner does it all, collects evidence and investigates. And again, you're writing a book and if you use other books like yours or TV shows and movies, you're going to get this wrong. First of all, for most CSI or lab, scientists, they're specialists. They don't, the person who does hair and fiber does not do blood spatter. They're specialists. And definitely their expertise is working in the lab and they're not going into the field. And people aren't finding evidence in the field and, oh, look, it's a chewed piece of gum. There might be DNA on it and picking it up and putting it in a tissue and putting it in their pocket. That doesn't work that way. There is a definite, clear rules for chain of custody that need to be followed if you're going to submit evidence in a case. And so that is very much something that you need to understand and read about. Again, if your book is going to be plausible and your reader is not going to assume that, you did your research by reading another book or watching CSI. There is what they now call the CSI effect, where people have written about, evidence gathering and DNA and all of that stuff. And they've done such a poor job that jurors who read these books and watch these TV shows expect that type of evidence in a trial, when in reality, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't happen that way. And the prosecutor has to spend a lot of time making sure jurors understand it's not like we didn't do our job or we failed to produce evidence. That was something that happened on TV. It doesn't happen in real life. And again, that's called the CSI effect. Isn't it a shame?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Pat has a question.
Would the forensic examiners, would they typically be agents or would they be specialists that just fees of the FBI?
Most of the time they are not agents. At one time, FBI agents were hired and they spent time their time in the lab. They don't do that as much now. And so most of the people in the lab are not investigators. They are hired for that lab and they go across the country testifying in state, local, federal cases as expert witnesses. But most of those time, those people are not agents. They are part of our professional support staff.
Good question.
Okay. Bomb techs, an FBI bomb tech is a dangerous job. And of course, anybody who's going to come up to a suspicious package and detonate it, that is a dangerous job. But manual manipulation of suspicious packages just don't happen anymore. It's not like on, what was that movie? Dark 100? You know what one I'm talking about it was a military movie. But there's no hand-to-hand bomb manual manipulation anymore. They have all kinds of robotic devices that detonate potential bombs. Most of the time, an FBI bomb tech is, as I was told, called after boom investigator. So after, yeah, you have pre-boom and post-boom, and there are after-boom investigators who come into a scene and gather the evidence to try to figure out what size bomb this was, what was it made of, how did it get there, how was it detonated, remote, timer. They come in after and try to gather all of that uh, information, and they are the expert witness about a bomb and how it was put together. They are, the person who's going to come in afterwards and do all of that. And this movie, I don't know if you've seen it, but The Kingdom, is very, very accurate about. A matter of fact, I just did one of the things that I do is every month I take a TV show or movie and I review it for teachable moments about the FBI. The one that's on my website right now is The Order, which is Jude Law. It just came out in December. And so I go through that and I talk about that. And that was based on a true case. And so I also have, comments from the case agent who originally investigated that and how he felt about the movie. And the next one coming up, it's in my newsletter. I do it on my newsletter, and then the month afterward, I put it on the website. The one that I have in my newsletter right now is The Kingdom. And so we talk about the movie and what they got right, what they got wrong, and some teachable moments from that to expand on what you learned in the movie. And I do have a number of episodes with bomb tech. So if you're writing a book that has an FBI bomb tech, those episodes are really going to provide a lot of good background information. All right, bad guys plot revenge against FBI agents who put them behind bars. And they have two movies where the FBI agent was hounded and under surveillance of the bad guy who wanted revenge. That doesn't happen very, very much. There has never been an FBI agent who has been killed by a subject or harmed by a subject. There have definitely been judges. You hear that, judges who have been killed by subjects. I think there's even been a couple of United States attorneys or prosecutors, but there's not been an FBI agent. And again, why? Because most of the time in our interactions, even with our subjects, we treat them with empathy and respect. And they can kind of understand that the agent is there doing their job and don't take it personal. There have been situations where a threat was made, and when that happens, the FBI acts immediately in keeping the agent and his or her family safe, even transferring that agent if they feel the threat is real and ongoing. But it's great. Again, put it in your book because it's definitely a great conflict and tension building area, but it just really doesn't happen anywhere near as much as you see. All right, last one. FBI agents are perfect and never get in trouble. Well, of course, I would like to say that is true, but as I said before, FBI agents are people, and we have had individual agents who may have colored outside the line. And above suspicion in this movie, an FBI agent, a kind of a new FBI agent, had an affair with one of his informants. When she got pregnant, in a fit of rage, he killed her. That's not a good thing. In Breach, of course, we talk about Robert Hanssen, who was selling secrets to the Soviet Union that ended up getting a number of our assets, Russian assets, killed. And then, of course, everybody knows about the FBI and the indiscretions during Martin Luther King time when they did a major overreach of their surveillance and electronic recordings and went way beyond anything that they could have even thought was criminal and was and violated his privacy and and personal rights. Um, and of course, you hear things now which just make me so angry when people talk about the FBI and corruption. I mean, I've explained to you the things that agents do every day, and when they take a brush, a wide brush, and paint the FBI as corrupt, who are they talking about? Are they, the agent who's working in the office, who's going out every day to keep America safe? We have 55 offices throughout the United States. All of those have satellite offices. When you make statements like that because there was a particular case or cases that you did not believe should have been investigated, that is an issue that has to do with those cases. But to take that paintbrush and paint the entire FBI as corrupt is irresponsible, and it makes agents unsafe when they go to knock on that door to get the information that they need to gather the evidence to keep America safe.
Jerry, I feel so lucky that we had you speaking with us today. I feel like we could have you for another 5 hours and not get everything that we want to know out of you.
Yeah, I had to, when in the time period, then I can't talk about a particular movie that I have on the screen. I had to skip that and just go to the lesson. But I had a great time. As you can tell, I love talking about this. I love talking about the FBI. The podcast has kind of taken over my writing career, even though I have a brand new agent. I met a new agent just casually at Thriller Fest. So I'm writing another 2-book series that, either way, if we can find a publisher, a traditional publisher, that's fine. But I do want to just encourage people that, things are changing. I want to do a traditional I'm trying again because, I'm getting older. As a independent publisher, my family is not going to continue, with posting my books and marketing my books, as I get older. But with a traditional publisher, that they'll still be out there. But if that doesn't work, then I know that I've built a great platform and to do it independently. And so you have the podcast, you have my movie reviews that I do, you have my FBI Myth and Misconception book, which comes in audio. All my books are in audiobooks, but you have audiobook, ebooks and hard book and paperback, and then you have my 2 crime novels, which I'm very, very proud of also. So visit me at jerrywilliams.com.
Thank you. You're such a treasure trove.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. We're so grateful to have you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh.
All right. I'm trying to get out. Hold on.
Wow.